Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Splice Beta Online. This is session number 8, says our producer. Shirley Chong is our producer, hiding behind the scenes as always. Let me quickly give you a shot there. That's her at her desk, looking out to a very beautiful afternoon in Singapore. We are Alan and Rashad. We are the ones behind Splice Beta.
So a quick introduction to Splice. For those who don't know us, we support media startups. We write about them. We do profiles. We do a little, we do workshops once in a while. We go in and do transformation projects. Anybody who's not on mute, ideally, best to mute yourselves if you're not speaking. Thank you, by the way. And we want to support bold, forward-looking media startups in Asia.
And the reason why we do all this is because we believe that there's a need for an ecosystem-based approach when it comes to transforming the industry that we all care about. So Beta is where all of this stuff comes together. It's a celebration of the amazing work that all media startups in this region are doing. We have over 40 sessions. I think we're almost, we're not even halfway through them yet, but we're getting there. We have over 40 speakers as well, but really the biggest thing that we're most excited by is the fact that we've got gender balance here when it comes to speakers. We also, by the way, have 5 different stacks across the entire week. So if you want to get all the details on that one, have a look on our website. Every Monday we are doing business. Every Tuesday is products. Every Wednesdays audience. Thursdays are operations and workflows, and Fridays are media careers.
And go to splicebeta.com stacks if you want to organize the way you use beta by these stacks and by these different disciplines. Otherwise, go to splicebeta.com/program for everything that the comprehensive program has to offer in a sort of chronological way. I just want to remind you that later on in this program, 7:30 Singapore time today, we have the fantastic Kevin Brocklin from MDIF, who is one of our sponsors. Thank you so much for being in our corner, guys. Kevin's going to take you through his area of one of his many areas of expertise, which is how to prepare for funding. How do you plan to ask for funds even before you know you need them? Charlie's just put his session into the chat box right now. We're gonna thank our sponsors. Major thanks to Facebook Journalism Project. Thank you so much for being our principal sponsor. Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, thank you for being our partner. It's great to have you in our corner. Google, Luminate, and MDIF, of course. Our friends at AFP, Foyo Media Institute, and our dear friends at IMS. Thank you so much for your support in many ways over the years. Click to View and Puma Podcast are helping us with video and audio, respectively.
Very quickly through the ground rules again. Use the Splice Beta hashtag. We like that because it gets the word out there. If you are speaking, use your headphones. Use microphones. Always helps. Make sure you're leaving your comments or questions and links in the chat box itself. Remember that this is where you come to meet other people. So if you want to leave your email addresses, please do that so that people can get in touch with you. We also have a Telegram group, which we should also post there. Just also remember that you should put yourself on mute when you're not speaking. Another reminder that all of this stuff will be or is being recorded right now and will be made available on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. Porn bombing is a thing, so if we get interrupted, please just ignore that. We will just kick the person off and get on with it as we are all adults here. Also, be kind and be generous. This is a really tough year for so many media companies, so let's all learn from each other and just keep rolling forward. And of course, what a way to kick off a Monday. Nice photo, Ross, from like 2 years ago, maybe.
I was going to say, I wonder who took that, Alan.
He didn't even look into the camera. I don't know what that was about.
I think there had been beer involved. It was in Prague, Pat.
Yeah, somewhere there.
Anyway.
So today's session is about rebuilding a B2B business after COVID. This is a really important session for many of us who are struggling with the old traditional shift of of advertising. And as we all know, a lot of companies have suffered huge declines in ad revenue because of COVID. There is obviously a better way of thinking about this, and Ross is here to take us through that. But before we go straight into this presentation, I just want to thank GIJN for supporting this presentation. Thank you so much, Anne, for making all of this happen. By the way, also, speaking of supporting, Ross is available as a mentor. So if anybody likes what he's saying here, agrees with what he's saying, and wants to deploy him, please let us know, and we'll connect you. And we would love to get both of you connected. And so with that, all over to you, Ross.
Cool. All right. So thank you, everybody. Present your window. Yes, window. There we go. Wait, let's not jump ahead.
Yep, it's coming up.
You see it?
Yep.
Very nice.
Very nice. So I wanted to say thank you, Alan Rashad. I'm really pleased to be here. I always love what you guys are doing. Thanks to GIJN also for inviting me on, and to everybody else that's supporting the effort. So the title for today is kind of moving forward, rebuilding after COVID. And I wish I could say that I'm going to offer like the silver bullet, the magic potion, but there isn't one. I've been in the kind of the business side of media for close to 30 plus years now. Been through a number of downturns, never seen a downturn like this. It's been sudden, and oddly enough, it's very uneven, depending on where you are. So I'm going to kind of just walk you through what I've been seeing from talking to different media companies, mostly around Southeast and East Asia, and just to kind of preview the experience in East Asia versus the experience in Southeast Asia have been quite different. Both down, but not down quite as dramatically in East Asia. So, and those of you that are dialing in from other parts of Asia, I apologize. I just don't have that kind of breadth. So I'm going to walk you through. It's a relatively short presentation. I'm really looking forward more to the questions. Commercial revenue. So commercial revenue is a euphemism, used to be a euphemism for advertising. But especially with a lot of recent startups, especially startups that are kind of journalistically focused or hard news focused, it'll often also involve sales of training or sales of fact-checking services or sales sometimes of even technology platforms. But the key word in all of that is sales. Commercial revenue is about sales. It is about building a relationship. And in this, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is going to be very similar to some of what I expect you to hear from the Membership Puzzle Project later this month. Because it is about building relationships. It's about, oddly enough, it's a little bit about empathy. It's about being able to put yourself in their position and then be able to reverse engineer what you have that you can sell to them. The last thing is relationships are a lot about understanding and communications. And like I said at the outset, the experience is really different. I mean, I've had the privilege to talk to media in South Asia. I've had the privilege of talking to media in Korea and Japan. And the experience has been pretty, it's not, nobody's had a positive experience, let's say, but the drama of the experience has been a lot different. The only way you're going to get to the experience of the company you're trying to sell is through building some sort of understanding and communications. For a lot of media companies that are built around the newsroom, it's the last thing you think about is, have I communicated with my advertisers today? Have I communicated with the 4 companies I sold training to last month? If you haven't, restarting your business is going to be hard. Because those people are all also manic trying to figure out how they save their businesses. The last piece of this is profits. Almost no one gets into, very few people get into the media business because they feel like they want to go out and sell people. It's usually not why you start in this business. You have a passion for a particular way of telling stories, a particular investigative angle, a particular video style. But it's very rarely that somebody has a particular unique vision for sales. Because of that, you do this to make money, to support all of that other stuff. So whether it's spending money on investigations or spending money on data or spending money on new approaches to video storytelling, those all cost money, and this is where most people get it. So just kind of to recap, commercial revenue is about sales to a company, whether you're selling advertising to a company, whether you're selling training services to a company, whether you're selling fact-checking services to a company, it's about sales. Sales, especially in an environment like this, is about relationships. Relationships are about understanding and communications. And for most media companies, you've got to be able to do it while still making enough money to justify doing it, right? You're not doing it just to do it. There's not a lot of intrinsic value in sales by itself, right? So this is not meant, this is kind of both meant as a hat tip to Splice Beta, but also it's a way of thinking. Your rebuilding is going to have to come from realizing that every situation is unique. Even in certain markets, a media's experience of COVID, of a steep, dark turn down, is going to be unique. Right? There are no silver bullets. You've got to do the hard work of understanding who you're selling, what you're selling, how much you're charging for it, how much can you get people to rebuy things that you were selling before. You're almost restarting from scratch. And I think in some cases, certainly in some digital markets, you're going to see types of advertising change pretty dramatically. We're certainly seeing that here in Hong Kong, and I hear from colleagues in Shenzhen and up in Shanghai that they're seeing it as well. The second is solutions are going to require innovation. I personally do not think we're going back to business as usual. So whether you call it the new normal, the post-COVID normal, the pre-vaccine pandemic normal, this is probably going to take another year or so from everything I've heard. Again, I'm not an epidemiologist nor a biologist or doctor. But what comes out at the end is probably going to be very different. That's certainly been the case with every other crisis, whether it was the recession in 2008, the Asian financial crisis in '97, the dot-com collapse in 2000. All of those, media came out at the other end different. And sometimes advertising came out on the other end different as well. So you're going to have to innovate. And I make 2 points here. It isn't just the business side. So if you're in a small startup, the business side of the newsroom is probably not that different. If you're in a mid-sized startup where you've got a small ad team, you can't just say, oh, let the ad team go figure this out. Because you're not going to figure anything out. You're going to have to figure it out. The newsroom, everybody's going to have to come together to figure out what they're going to sell on the commercial revenue side. And that also means spending enough time with knowing who major clients are. So having enough sense of who you can sell to understand these are going to be our core clients. And now we need to understand them client at a time, right? It's a little different than creating segments of members. And this is kind of a basic beta mindset. You're going to have to realize your situation is unique. You're going to have to innovate, put something out there. Some of it will work and some of it will fail. The failures you stop, and the things that work you keep working on. So again, my experience of COVID is I've been privileged to be at a university, so I don't really have day-to-day kind of sales pressures, but I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of media that are dealing with this. And the devil is really in the details. So COVID is been different in Hong Kong, it's been different in Japan, it's been different in South Asia. So the one common thing is economic activity is down everywhere. What's interesting is if you're in a middle or middle upper income market like a Taiwan or a Japan, it's down, but it's not collapsed, right? There's still, restaurants are operating, bars are even operating in Hong Kong as of yesterday. If you're in a poor market, or if you're in an emerging market with kind of a relatively small middle class and a large kind of poor or agricultural class, for a lot of those markets, the economy has collapsed, right? There is no longer a big economy. It's kind of shrunk down to just the economy of individual locations. Advertising is down. Yeah, we've all experienced it. It's somewhat down if you're online. If you have a strong online video presence, it may be down. In some cases, it may even be up a little bit. If you're in a local media in a mid-size, kind of moderate income market, you're struggling. I mean, people have probably seen news reports from the US and from Australia of kind of chains of local newspapers starting to close up shop. That's a pretty common story. I've heard it from people in Latin America. I've heard it from the Australians. So, but the point here is that the devil is in the details. Every market is going to be a little different. And you're going to have to figure out what's happening in your market at the macro level. And you're going to have to figure out where you fit in all of that. This is a schematic. This is a summary of a couple of slides from the World Economic Forum. But it's just to give you an example. Online media has suffered, but it has not suffered dramatically. It's kind of a medium recession for online media. But if you're in media that is outdoor based, so if you're in selling a magazine or you're selling a newspaper at the newsstand or using hawkers in the street, like in Jakarta or Yangon, your circulation revenue numbers are basically collapsed. If you're in outdoor, not a lot of journalistically driven media are in outdoor, your numbers are, you're giving away ad space. The point here is this is different in different markets. I mean, in this part of the world, in Hong Kong and China, I mean, gaming ad revenue is actually up pretty significantly because people have nothing better to do than sit at home when they're in lockdown and play video games. And there's enough ad demand for selling other video games that people are making money. So you're gonna have to understand a little bit of where you fit and how you can capitalize on it. Impacts on consumers. So remember, almost all of the clients, certainly the advertising clients you're going to talk to, they're coming to you because you're renting them the eyeballs of your readers. They're coming to you for your consumers. And that's kind of what you're selling them. You're selling them access to your eyeballs. The impact on consumers in big online markets like Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, O2O services are up, virtual is up. So actually it's been if you're in the Ele.me or the Deliveroo market, it's been pretty good business. Selling anything virtual, whether it's over-the-top television or video games or digital books, it's been a pretty good business. People have time to burn. Local is pretty challenged. Interesting thing, I was on a call with a handful of advertising agencies recently, and in a lot of markets, especially online markets, the trust in brands is up, which is new because trust in brands had been declining. So when you're buying something online, you want to buy something that you know, and brands is basically a signal that you know it. So trust in brands in a lot of online markets is up. In lower online markets, so in markets where online penetration is lower, when bandwidth is slower, local continues. It kind of shrink. The consumers have kind of shrunk into their local communities, and in some cases may even grow a little bit. It's basically things people may have been dabbling with online. They've come back to the local markets. People try to get as digital as they can, realizing that that's the way they access things outside of local. But trust in local in some markets has been up. I've had the privilege to do a little bit of work in Bangladesh recently, and in some of the outlying cities outside of Dhaka, you're seeing some interest in kind of local advertisers and local media. So, but the point here is you're going to need to understand what's happening with your consumers in general in your market, but also in specific with the people that are coming to your website or coming to your podcasts or coming to your video platforms. You're going to need to understand, most of you are probably seeing big surges in traffic, or certainly some uptick in traffic just from people stuck at home with nothing else to do. The question is, who are those people? Can you describe them? What do you know about them? What are they watching? Impact on clients, this is the other set of details. Training and services, No, they are all looking around it. Many of them have time to do training, right? They've got people that are on furlough or they have people on half time. The question is who to train and what to train them on and what's their specific goal for this. Is it an accreditation? Is it a license? Is it a piece of software? What is it that you can train them on that will help them meet some goal they have for their organization during this period? Advertising. It's been phenomenal to watch advertising. So in some markets, you've got governments who have literally stepped in with public health announcements to pick up the slack for declining ad revenue. In other places, you've got big branding campaigns. I don't know, the Google Japan campaign, the Google US and UK campaigns, incredible campaigns. You've seen a couple of, but they're kind of trying to build trust, trying to build awareness around the space. But the question is kind of going back to your advertisers, who do they want to reach in all of this? It's probably not the same people or maybe a larger set of people than they were trying to reach before. What do they want to communicate? So what's the message? There's a lot of creativity I'm seeing, I don't know about everybody, but I'm seeing a lot of creativity in messaging, so how they message, how they use the different platforms, and importantly, what impact do they want they want the consumer that sees the ad to take away. So they want there's a lot of activation advertising, so people that are trying to build lists of potential consumers. So, and it's often FMCG or packaged goods companies that are doing this. They're just trying to reach out during this to kind of expand their footprint. But again, the point here is the devil is really in the details. There is no universal statement about advertising that I feel comfortable making other than it's down. But it's down not uniformly by media. It's down, messages are not uniform. There does seem to be a good bit of trust building and branding, and there does seem to be a lot of activation advertising right now. But I haven't seen any numbers that I could share that would be relevant to this part of the world. So it's an impression. But the question is, you guys are going to have to go out. If you're going to kickstart this business, you're going to have to see what is left, what advertisers are planning there, what they're talking about, what they're worried about, what they're willing to pay, and what kind of intent they have for the ads. Why are they doing it? So that's kind of details and impact on clients. The next part is really coming back to yourselves. You know, what's your personal starting point, your media? What's been your experience? Who's your new COVID audience? I've asked this of a lot of media. People know they have a new audience because they've seen numbers go up, especially people that are doing specialty sections on COVID-19 or public health, or there are a handful of lifestyle magazines in Asia that have done a couple of interesting things on stay at home, life at home, home education. But who is that audience? Where do they come from? And it's both the metrics of where they came from. Did they come from Facebook? Did they come from another website? But also, what do you know about them? Did they read the entire article? You know, just what is their engagement? And then specifically, what are they reading or watching from you? It's going to give you a clue. All of this information will be interesting to advertisers. Because remember, advertisers' direct connection with consumers is at the checkout. It's when they buy something. This is their advertising connections generally, I mean, there are exceptions to this, but is generally secondary, right? They create a message and then they give you the message to reach your consumers. Again, I didn't say this up front. I'm not the programmatic advertising, the kind of the infrastructure of programmatic advertising I'm not really talking about here because it's not really something we sell, right? We manage it, but it's really Google and Facebook that sells it for us, right? And we kind of manage it against our content plans, against how it's positioned on the website or on our social media. So for me, that is commercial revenue, but it's not revenue that can be directly impacted with selling. It's hard to do that. But this kind of information, if you're talking to a local agency or local advertiser, they're often quite interested in it because they're looking for every piece of information about the consumers they're trying to reach to understand what's going on with them. Then the question is, what do you know about your clients? And this is where I find most media, especially startup media, fall down. Is they spend so much time working the news, which is their core business, But they forget that all of these people that they had been selling services to, whether it's ad services or training services or fact-checking services, those people are all out there and they're all struggling. I mean, maybe Unilever is not struggling, but they're certainly not having a good year. So what do you know about the impact on specific clients? And the best way to do that is to talk to them. So if you have an ad sales team and they're on furlough or they're on part-time or you've diverted them to other parts of the business to support, which has been a pretty common situation, maybe time to get them back on the phones. The thing I hear most from advertisers is you've got kind of two attitudes. You've got a handful of people that are trying to get ahead of the recovery, and they're really leaning into solutions, and they're trying lots of different things. This is true of the big platforms, Facebook, Instagram. Those guys are really looking for ways to kind of take the business forward. I don't know whether it's applicable here. I've seen a lot of Facebook shopping business in the US has really moved forward really quickly. The same thing for products. You've seen a lot of product people looking for how to repackage things, how to deliver things, how to get feedback on things. And so they're really proactive in trying to figure out where they're going. And then you've got a lot of advertisers, and this for me includes some big advertisers who are basically just set back, right? Where they don't want to make a wrong move, and so they're making no moves. So the question for me is, you need to understand of your advertisers who are trying to figure out solutions, because those people you can sell. Those are people that are trying to figure out things. If your audience matches the people they're trying to sell or the messages they're trying to communicate, you can sell them. But you've got to get in there and figure out how are they thinking about solutions. What part of the business, is it a CSR message? Is it a sales message? Is it a lead activation message? What are they trying to do? Why are they trying to do it? And then start figuring out what you can package up of your own. For the advertisers who are kind of taking a wait and see attitude, maybe you can bring some special insights from your understanding of your experience and your consumers' experience of COVID. But if they're not moving on their own, it's very hard to see that as a big sales opportunity. So, just kind of going back, the next step for me is really figuring out your starting point. And your starting point is really, it's a little bit your internal organization. I didn't really talk about this. How are you set? Did you furlough people? Have you redeployed people into other parts of the business? If you're feeling like it's time to come back to commercial revenue, and I think in some markets, I can't say every market, certainly in Hong Kong, ad sales, I don't want to say it's starting again, but I see people buying ads. I see new ads on the television, on YouTube. So the question for you is really, when you're ready to redeploy, what's your starting point, both from a consumer standpoint, and then importantly, from the client standpoint? Product and pricing, this is pretty straightforward. What are you selling them? I'd say for a lot of startup media, this is always a problem, COVID or no COVID. I'm selling you space in my newspaper. I'm selling you impression page views on my website. If that's what you think you're selling them, you're probably not selling a lot. So I would step back and figure out what the client is trying to do in this difficult situation. And then how can you help them do it? And then if that involves page views, great. If it involves an event, great. If it involves some sort of use of a list, great. But you're going to have to be creative about it, because I think they're trying to be creative with what their marketing and communications goals are. So again, what problem are you solving for them? Why do they need to do this? What are their, is this something they're doing one time? Is this something they're going to be doing for a long time? My opinion would be there may be some short-term money in helping people advertise CSR messages that are specific to COVID. And if you can get that, get it. But the thing I'm really curious about, and I don't have a silver bullet here, is I think advertisers are going to be much more focused, certainly in online markets, like Singapore and Hong Kong, they're going to be much more focused on activation messages and much less focused on branding messages. And what that means is they're going to be trying to get your information. They want to know who you are, so they can reach out to you so that when next time you buy something online, they can kind of influence that either through data or through a trade relationship with one of the online platforms. But you're building a product around something that happens one time is expensive. Building a product around something you believe is going to be happening on an ongoing basis is smart. So pricing, you're going to have to figure out, again, you're going to have to understand them well. And right now, people have money to spend. A lot of people put money back in their pockets. I was reading an article from, I want to say, the Interactive Advertising Bureau that said they did a survey in second quarter. About a quarter of all advertising was just put back. People just put it back in their budgets. So that money is there to be spent. It may drop to the bottom line when people have to report financials, but there was a marketing budget there that people just pulled out. They just canceled contracts, dropped advertising relationships, just pulled out. So you're going to have to step back and say, in this environment, what value am I providing to them? Of course, can you make money on the sale? Again, you're doing this to make money to pay for other things. And can you sell this in a recurring basis? And again, this is something I would say I see a lot from startup media, is that people are so thrilled with their first sale that the first sale is, I don't want to say it's easy, but I can guarantee you, if it's something if you're really serious about selling something, you will sell it. The question is, can you sell it again? And that really is, can you sell a package? Can you develop a package or a set of products or a set of benefits for a client that you can replicate on a regular basis? It doesn't have to be rebuilt from scratch, custom each time. And can you do it over and over and over again? That is a business. Selling something one-off custom is a probably low margin, not necessarily, doesn't really help you in the long term, in my opinion. Other people might argue with that, and I'm happy to have the argument. But relationships and communications. Do you know who you're going to sell? Has it changed during COVID? So are there businesses that you were selling before that are no longer interested? Either they furloughed people and they don't need to train them anymore, or they've closed up shop, or they no longer have retail outlets, so they don't need the type of advertising you were selling them. But this is both the company, at the company level, and importantly, it's also at the individual level. So it's all well and good to know you're selling Unilever. Who at Unilever? What's their name? What's their phone number? What's their personal experience of COVID? Right? You need to understand all of that, because you're going to ask them for a lot of money. Right? So you need to understand well enough both the company's experience that you're selling, as well as the person who's going to make the buy, the person that's going to buy this from you. Again, I can't say this is uniform, but a lot of startups I've talked to, maybe half in the time since March, when you ask, oh, who have you talked to on the commercial side? No one. Or, last time we talked to them was when they canceled their contract. Not good. You probably should reach out. So anybody that canceled sales, now's the time to reach back out for them. If you're seeing COVID begin to moderate, we're on wave 3 here in Hong Kong, so I'm not really sure what moderate means anymore, but if you're starting to see some light and some relatively normal marketing activity, the first people I would call are the people that you had sales contracts with that are either on hold or canceled. Any past clients, go back to them. If the person is left, find the new person. It's a lot of tedious phone time, Zoom time, meet time, but it's now the time to do it. Not a lot. This is the time to prepare for sales. The last piece here is, and this I have to give credit to a colleague here in Hong Kong, but do you have a virtual sales strategy? Sales is often a very personal thing. As an old ad sales guy, I know I used to get criticized for having 2 lunches and 2 dinners and drinks every day, because it is a very personal business. that personal, that premise-based, that meet you at the cafe, meet you at the club, meet you at the restaurant sale is not going to continue. So a lot of this is going to move into some sort of virtual scenario. And in many ways, it's going to look like kind of managing a membership funnel that I'm sure you'll hear more from the Membership Puzzle Project team when they talk later this month. But the question is, do you have a virtual sales strategy? And if not, how are you going to build one? So that kind of leads me to what is a virtual sales strategy? So a lot of you don't have, I mean, a lot of, especially small startup media companies that are developing commercial revenue as a support for their core news and investigative business. That's fine. But the point of commercial revenue is you want to have a regular, recurring, dependable revenue source. A lot of startup media in pre-COVID times are going to have kind of one-off. They'll sell something and then they'll stop and go back to the newsroom. They'll take somebody from the newsroom and produce it. Not really a sustainable business, right? So one reflection of a sustainable commercial revenue business is, do you have a list of clients? I remember a couple of years ago, I was working with a big Malaysian news portal who will remain nameless, but you can all probably guess. And you know, I thought their approach was their first approach to developing a larger sales infrastructure was to build a customer relationship management system. Which at the time I thought, I'm a sales guy, so I'm like, let's knock on a door. And they were, no, we need to know everybody's door that we're going to knock on first. In retrospect, that was a smart strategy for, and one that I've kind of shared with just about everybody that would listen. But you need to have a list of the clients. You know, how did you choose them? How are you going to find them? Based on what criteria did you think they will become a client? From that, you're going to develop some sort of regular client communications, a newsletter, an ad site, a training website, but you're going to develop something that they're going to want to come and check on a regular basis. The next step is really just developing an expression of interest. You can put out a webinar that people have to sign up for. You're trying to get, this is lead generation at its most basic. Or you're trying to get them to sign up for something that you're going to tell them. I'm going to tell you about our experience of COVID and what we think we can do for you. Sign up. White papers. How many of you have signed up for a white paper and have to fill out a ridiculous number of blanks in order to get the white paper downloaded? Lead generation. You need to be thinking in that way for your advertising base. Even if it's just a couple of dozen advertisers, it is a way of thinking. Once you've got the expression of interest, then you're going to start to build some sort of virtual inquiry. It could be a situation analysis of their situation. Let us understand what your situation is. You could build a pitch for them. And then finally, there's the sales call. What are you pitching? The benefits. And what's the pricing? And I also, you know, I can't say that we're far enough into this yet, but you are starting to hear people being successful with virtual calls. So not closing a deal at dinner. Excuse me. But however you construct this is going to look a lot. I tried to do a funnel that I was completely design crippled here. So, but there is a funnel thinking aspect to this, the same way you would think about it in terms of developing a subscription base, right? Who am I targeting at the top? How do I draw them in with content? So newsletters, an ad site, a training site, that's all content. You guys are content creators. You should be good at this. Then how do I get them to express some interest? Is it a comment? Is it a webinar they have to sign up for? Is it a white paper they have to request? But what's the increment, the incremental information I'm getting from them? Then from there, you're going to create some sort of virtual inquiry. So you're going to contact them in some way. You're going to vet them. You're going to kind of qualify, are they worth taking forward or not? And that is going to be unique to what you're selling, what your pricing is, can you execute? But you're going to qualify them in some way. Once they're qualified, you're going to build a pitch, and then you're going to sell them. But the more of this you can do virtually, the faster you're going to get your business back. Last is staffing. This is probably one of the most critical pieces of it. So I started in sales. So some of you know this. Some of my old colleagues know this, that I did have a very brief time in the newsroom. But I moved to sales and marketing pretty quickly. And I was a sales guy. Let's go out and let me sell this to you. A lot of what you're seeing is people that were knocking on doors before, that talent has moved to something more like sales support. A lot of the things that are happening in this funnel are marketing things. They're not so much sales things. They're going through and building a list, then qualifying the list, then building a website, then getting the lead, then the sale. So the type of person you're looking for is going to move a little bit from sales to more sales support. You're probably going to do more training and preparation for a particular call in this case than you would in another case. I mean, you can charm an ad. I'm less good at that, but I've seen other colleagues who are phenomenal at charming an ad with literally a napkin and a pen. You're going to see a lot more account maintenance. Once you sell somebody, you want to keep them. You're going to want to sell them once, but you want to have some sense of how I'm going to sell them again. So you'll have an account plan. Ideally, you'll have more contracts. Right? What you want to do is build revenue in place. You want to build it so that it's recurring. You want to build it so that it is predictable. And you want to build it so that you can build real ad products, ad marketing communications products, that they will buy. To build those products, you're going to need some sort of forward-looking impression of what revenue they're going to generate. Staffing. So I'm just about done with this long-winded thing. A few things I would do. Know the devil in the details. I was just looking as people were coming on. You know, the great thing about Splice is always there's so many people from so many different environments and so many different places, but kind of all unified with kind of the pink Splice attitude. All of those different places are having a different experience. The top line that ads are down and that business is hard, you can't. It's very hard to react to that. Okay, ads are down. Now what? Ads are down how? For whom? Why? And ideally, you're going to build this with the newsroom so that the business experience of your media organization is something that's shared. It's not something that's just consigned to those people on the second floor who go out to lunch all the time. Get creative. How are you going to reflect this new reality? How are you going to do it in kind of a positive way? Sales is about positivity. So you need to kind of get creative about how you're going to reflect a new reality. For most people, it has been a dismal experience. So how are you going to take that forward? Get virtual. Be as regular and be as insightful as you can. Make the premise call the deal signer. So if you're going to go, a premise call is when I go out and I meet the advertiser in their office, or I go to the agency, we sign the deal. If you've got to do a premise call, make it the last call. Do all of the prep that leads up to it so that getting the signature it's a foregone conclusion. And lastly, with all of these changes, it's really easy to throw a lot of money at fixing advertising or fixing your training sales organization or fixing your services sales organization. And in fixing it, you basically raise the cost so much that you lose money. So just be, your accounting team are your friends. Make sure that they know what you're planning on spending and that what you're planning on charging. So that is kind of it. Alan mentioned this earlier. This is my contact information, but easier to contact the Splice team. But if you're interested in having a conversation about where the devil in your details, I can't tell you I have a silver bullet or a magic potion or anything that's going to fix things, but at least I can be a bit of a business therapist. So with that, I will wind down, and hopefully there are lots of questions.
Man, Ross, you've outdone yourself again.
Oi!
That's a lot to think about. I think if I could summarize what you've just said there, you're basically saying COVID is an opportunity for a hard reset, whether we like it or not. It's time to reset our value proposition to our audiences and to our customers.
Yeah.
And then two, make sure you know exactly what your customer wants, because come next year, everything's going to be different again. So if you're not sure what they're doing or where their minds are, then you're going to fail to take full opportunity of that shift when it happens again.
Yeah. I mean, every time
And-
I'm sorry, Alan, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's given me a lot of anxiety right now, because I'm feeling, oh shit, I have a whole bunch of sponsors on this call and I haven't been checking up with them. So all of you expect a call from me.
That's right. I mean, we're literally just saying, Ross, that we need to be able to take we need to do the virtual sales call. What is our virtual plan? Like, we've done, again, this is just to use ourselves as guinea pigs. We've done a few online events. We've tried to pivot from, offline events to online events and blah, blah, blah. But I want to be able to, both of us want to be able to reach out to our clients, a lot of whom are on this call, as Alan said, and say, hey, what are you expecting from us? What can we do for you that addresses something that you need? How can we reach audiences that you want to reach? And what can we do to process that relationship in the form of products? Is that kind of the right course of action?
So I'll give you no better education than failure, another beta mindset. So I was working for a very large American media company during the 2000, and there was a little recession. It was basically American specific in 2002, 2003. And, I had a very large classified business, very large. 9 figures of classified business. And we were like, okay, we'll survive. We put some people on furlough. And I basically talked to nobody. We upgraded our platform. We changed a little bit. We changed a handful of things that were internal. So we had the people to do it. We didn't spend any money. So when we woke up the next year, a little company called Craigslist, some of you may know Craigslist, had taken the entire summer rental business, which for one of the newspapers in our group was $25 million. We went from $25 million one summer before the crisis to zero in less than 12 months after the crisis. And if I had been talking to these brokers of real estate properties in the Hamptons, it was a long time ago in a very old newspaper, I would have known this was going on. So yeah, if this is a business, again, the thing about commercial revenue is it's not right for every media startup. It's just not. Because it requires you to do something that in some cases is not core to your journalistic mission. Like selling ads doesn't have anything to do with investigating corruption in the food chain or whatever it is you're investigating. But sometimes it does. It creates the additional revenue that allows you to work on a story and then realize, there's no story here, right? But the issue is, if you're going to get into it, get into it. Don't sell an ad and then be glad for it, and then 6 months later remember, oh yeah, maybe I should go out and call another advertiser. You're going to get into it. Maybe you partner with somebody to do it. Maybe you, and if you're small, I saw somebody flash up on the screen about a small question. I'd say if you're small, be very careful. Maybe you don't have to start with advertising. You don't have to start with selling services, because sometimes it takes you away from the content and the audience is in most media companies, content and the audience is number one. And if you're small, focus on that. And again, not to keep plugging the Membership Puzzle Project, but I'm big fans, and they'll talk a little bit about, because that's a good way to start. Once you've got a big audience, once you're Splice size, then you can turn around and say, let me tell you what I can do for you. I have 2.5 million people every day who are reading my public health. Anyway, but yeah, if this is a business you're serious about, then you should be talking to people, because you don't want to wake up at the end of this and realize those people all have done something completely different.
Thank you, Ross. Pat Bird, formerly known as Knowledge Bridge. You can go on mute and ask Ross your question.
So Ross, this was great. I just wanted to add that, and along with what Ross said, your advertisers are also finding themselves in a pickle. And if you can come to them and say, how can I be your partner? It won't always be a sale, like Ross said, but it's part of your relationship building. We've seen some great examples at MDIF, and there's some great examples, for example, in the US with the Local Media Project, where media organizations are going to small businesses and entrepreneurs and saying, how can we give you a big discount? How can we keep you afloat and advertise? And what they're doing is building a relationship that will come to, hopefully, to fruition in the coming year. So I just want to reinforce everything Ross has said is so important, but the relationship building to me is I just kept underlining that because he's a master at that. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, Corinne just jumped off, it seems, but she's got a really great question here, Ross, and very similar to what you were saying about small outlets and the opportunities that are out there for them. She wrote, for a small outlet with a small team where everyone, including the CEO and founder, is trying to do everything, what are some of the learning priorities for that? What are the opportunities there if you're small? And that's kind of tied into another question that we had from Florence, which is very similar. How can you, what can you think, or how you think about a model that takes you away from just advertising? I think that the two, as you alluded to earlier, being small and, the two kind of dovetail at some point. I'll leave that to you.
Small, so I'm going to be a bit contrarian here. You can be too small. If this is a business that you're getting into, and you're serious about whether it's selling training or selling fact-checking services or selling advertising, then there is a point at which you are too small. Either your audience isn't large enough or it's not distinct enough. And I would then say, don't worry about this. Focus on what you can. But there is a, media shop of 4 or 5, instant articles, ad network, call it a day. Make the money there, get smart about that, because that's all about your content, and move on. When your audience is large, and it doesn't have to be huge, it has to be clear, differentiated. But the big benefit, and I've said this Pat heard this 1,000 times, the benefit of an advertiser, and it's a very mercantile benefit, is they are coming to you for the characteristics of the eyeballs you can provide. And a lot of startup media sites, especially journalistically focused ones, they get so focused on the story that they forget about the eyeballs. And so an advertiser, if you are going to go if you're going to go get advertising, they will force the discipline on, wait, who is reading this? How many people read it? And I've unfortunately been in a handful of these calls where the media is then forced to literally boot up their analytics platform and reveal, no one read that story. So the benefit of advertising is if you are going, especially if you are building a kind of a big media, not a vertically focused, doesn't mean that vertically focused can't be big, but kind of an omnibus media platform, the advertiser is going to force you to know who's reading what are their characteristics, what did they do next, what data do you have on them. They're going to be very mercantile about it, and they'll first force you to be mercantile about it. But to Corinne's question, you can't be too small. And I would say, go back to what's important to your success. And if this is not 1 or 2, don't do it. I don't know. Other people, Pat?
Yeah. No, thanks, Ross. Listen, I just want to say we're going over time just a little bit, but Ross, we really did want to take you up on that mentorship, very generous mentorship offer you made. I know that there are a bunch of people who are wanting to learn from you, including us. Should we get a mentorship from Ross? Don't you think it's about time?
Long overdue. I mean,
Long
we
overdue.
have him down as an advisor on our website, so
advisor.
time to call that in.
Yeah, any day, any day. I got Laksa. You're gonna have to buy food for me, man.
Anytime. So
Yeah.
listen, and I know you like noodles. You put that on your bio, so I wore this especially for you.
Oh, thank you.
But listen, Alan's going to ask one last question, and then
Okay.
we should wrap it up. I'm sure everybody has
it is running
stuff to do.
So very quickly, next year is also an interesting year because we're going to see the end of third-party cookies, and I think that's a very important phase and yet another hard reset for the advertising relationship, right? What is the one piece of advice you would give publishers who currently don't have first-party cookies or first-party data on their readers?
Well, the easy answer is get it. I mean, the data is the mathematical manifestation of understanding. Advertisers notwithstanding, forget them for a second. You need that data. You need that data. And you need that data to understand. I have a class. We just started classes here. I post to the class every year. I will buy a Starbucks card. It's easy. For anybody that brings me a serious nonfiction media execution that is new. And last year I was looking for TikTok examples. This year I'm looking for Quiso, which is a live streaming platform here in East Asia. I mean, this is day 1 of week 2, and I already have 4 Starbucks cards I owe out there. If you don't want to do that by hit or miss, you need data. You need to understand what are kids doing, what are older people doing. That is data. And the nice thing about advertisers is they have so much data that when they ask you for something specific, they know what they're doing with it, right? So my only advice to you is that you need to understand your consumers incredibly well, especially if you're going to sell advertising, and especially next year. And the advertisers can help you with that because they're going to ask you questions about your consumers you may never have thought to ask before. That would, my answer is data is your friend, accounting is your friend. Have more accountants and have a data analyst and sell a lot of ads. Or training or services or whatever, but ads is what I know, so.
Professor Settles, thank you so much for that. That was awesome. We want you back.
Not at all.
We're gonna have you back on this in one way or another. We want mentorship, we want advisories, we want all kinds of things. Listen, Shirley's just popped in a link to the chat box. Thank you, Shirley. Ross has mentioned the membership puzzle project a couple of times. This is a great session. This is next week. But listen, right after this, Singapore time, 7:30, we're having, I just want to remind you about Kevin Brockland, another finance whiz, how to prepare for funding, prepare for your funding ask before you actually need it, which is a great follow-up from what Ross has been talking about. Ross, if ever you want to share your deck, we're in the market for that. If you don't, we respect that as well. But we'll be popping everything into the resources pages on the website, so look out for that. Listen, shall we thank our sponsors? Always, Facebook Journalism Project and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, thank you so much for being in our corner. Everybody else, hey, thank you for coming. Please come back. We'll see you later this evening.